Most lifters chasing heavier numbers are not building more muscle. They are accumulating joint wear, recruiting compensatory muscles, and grinding through reps that the target tissue barely registers. A 2020 systematic review in sports medicine analyzing 14 studies and over 1,100 trained subjects found that lifters using submaximal loads with strict execution produced equivalent or superior hypertrophy compared to those using heavier loads with degraded form. The variable that mattered was not weight on the bar, it was tension delivered to the target muscle through a full controlled range of motion. This is not a story about lifting light. It is a story about why the number on the bar stopped predicting your results and why nobody on the gym floor will tell you. First, the belief that heavier weight always equals more muscle has shaped lifting culture for 40 years, and it is wrong in a specific way that costs you tissue and time. Mechanical tension is the primary driver of hypertrophy, but tension is not synonymous with load. Tension is force experienced by individual muscle fibers across a working range. When form breaks down, the load shifts. A barbell row at 100 kilograms performed with thoracic flexion and momentum transfers force into the lumbar spine, the biceps, and the posterior chain instead of the lats. The number on the bar is unchanged. The stimulus to the lats is reduced by an estimated 20 to 40%, depending on the degree of compensation. Schoenfeld and colleagues have repeatedly demonstrated in EMG studies that excessive load with poor positioning produces lower target muscle activation than moderate load with controlled execution. The consequence is not just slower progress, it is a misallocation of recovery capacity. Every set performed with broken form taxes the central nervous system and connective tissue while delivering a fraction of the intended hypertrophic signal. Lifters wonder why 6 months of adding plates produced almost no measurable change in arm or chest circumference. The answer was written into every poorly executed rep. The first solution is verification. Film one set of every major lift from a side angle once per week. If the bar path drifts, if the spine collapses, if the working joint loses its intended angle, the load is too high regardless of how it feels. If you are still watching, this video will save you roughly 12 weeks of stalled progress on your main lifts. Subscribe and stay for the next 5 arguments. Second, the relationship between range of motion and muscle growth is not what most lifters were sold. Partial reps performed with heavier loads were popularized as a way to overload the strongest portion of a movement. A 2023 meta-analysis in the European Journal of Sports Science examining 19 studies found that full range of motion produced 28% greater hypertrophy on average compared to partial reps at match volume, particularly at long muscle lengths. The mechanism is structural. Stretch-mediated hypertrophy occurs when a loaded muscle is held in a lengthened position, triggering mechanotransduction pathways that partial range training does not access. A half squat at 200 kilograms looks impressive. A full-depth squat at 140 kilograms with the hip below the knee crease produces measurably more growth in the gluteus maximus and adductors. The lifter who chases load by cutting depth is trading the most hypertrophic portion of the lift for ego. Over a training cycle, this distinction is not minor. Schoenfeld documented that long-length partial reps in the stretch position alone outperforms shortened range partials by roughly double for the same total work. The bar weight is not the stimulus. The stretch under tension is. Lifters who never reach full depth on squats, never lower the bar to the chest on bench, never let the elbow extend on triceps work, are leaving the most productive portion of every set on the floor. The fix is to reduce load until full controlled range becomes possible on every working set without form failure. Third, the layer of mechanism most experienced lifters still miss is the interaction between intent and execution speed. A repetition is not a single event. It is a concentric phase, an isometric pause, and an eccentric phase, each with distinct mechanical demands. The eccentric portion is where the majority of muscle damage and hypertrophic signaling occurs. A 2017 review by Schoenfeld and Gergich in Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research established that eccentric tempos of 2 to 4 seconds produce superior hypertrophy compared to uncontrolled descents under 1 second. Heavy loads typically force lifters into faster eccentrics because the weight cannot be controlled across a longer duration. A 100 kilogram bench press dropped onto the chest in under 1 second delivers less productive tension than 75 kilograms lowered across 3 seconds with intent. The lifter feels the heavier set is harder. The pectoral fibers experience less time under stretch and lower mechanotransductive load. This is the gap between perceived effort and actual stimulus. Total time under tension per set in the productive range matters more than peak load. A working set that lasts 30 to 70 seconds with controlled tempo produces consistently more hypertrophy than a set that finishes in 12 seconds with momentum. Most lifters who plateau at intermediate load have never measured their tempo. They believe they are training hard. They are training fast. The two are not the same. Fourth, the long-term cost of prioritizing load over execution does not show up in the first 8 weeks. It shows up in joint health at year 2, and tendon integrity at year 4, and installed hypertrophy at every interval in between. Cumulative microtrauma to articular cartilage and tendon insertion points compounds with every poorly executed rep. A longitudinal analysis published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine in 2019, tracking 1764 recreational lifters over 5 years, found that those reporting consistent form breakdown had a 58% higher incidence of shoulder, lumbar, and knee injury, severe enough to interrupt training for more than 4 weeks. The trap is invisible. The lifter feels strong. The numbers progress for 18 months. Then a tendon strain or disc bulge halts training entirely. The recovery period erases hypertrophy gained over the previous half year. Helms has noted that the strongest predictor of long-term physique development is uninterrupted training continuity, not peak load lifted. The lifter who pushed weight through compensations for 2 years rebuilds from baseline after the inevitable injury. The lifter who held form across the same period accumulates compounding tissue. The pattern resembles compound interest in reverse. Small daily violations of position invisible at month 1 become structural failures at year 3. Fifth, the turning point is recognizing that load is a downstream variable, not an upstream one. Hypertrophy depends on recruiting and fatiguing high threshold motor units in the target muscle. Motor unit recruitment is governed by the size principle. As force demand increases within a set, progressively larger motor units are activated until the highest threshold fibers are engaged near the final reps. This recruitment is sensitive to position, range, and tempo. A set taken to 2 reps short of failure with strict form on a moderate load fully recruits high threshold units across the target muscle. A set with the same load and same RIR, but with form, breakdown shifts recruitment to synergists and stabilizers, leaving the target muscle understimulated. The 2022 Vygotsky study in Journal of Applied Physiology demonstrated that effective stimulus is determined by motor unit recruitment in the target tissue, not by external load alone. This explains why 2 lifters using the same weight and the same rep count produce different growth. The variable is not the bar. It is the signal the bar is delivering to the intended fibers. Without controlled execution through full range, the load is acting on tissue that was never the target. Sixth, the actionable resolution comes down to 4 specific behaviors you can implement starting at your next session. First, select a load that allows full intended range of motion on every rep of the working set. If the last 2 reps require form breakdown to complete, the load is too high by approximately 5 to 10%. Second, control the eccentric to a 2 to 3 second descent on every compound lift. Use a stopwatch or count silently. Third, film 1 working set per major lift each week from a fixed angle and review for joint position, depth, and tempo. Fourth, progress load only when 3 consecutive sessions allow the target rep range with strict execution. If technique degrades to add weight, the progression is artificial. Do not chase numbers to feel progress. The body responds to tension experienced by the target fibers, not to the figure on the bar. The 28% advantage from full range execution in the 2023 meta-analysis is not a small edge. It is a permission slip. Permission to stop chasing the bar number and start chasing the rep that the muscle actually receives. The plates are optional. The tissue is built somewhere else.